It's the whole concept of, well, I'll talk about it in a moment, but it's the whole concept of God wants to do things among us, which changes how we are, not who we are, but how we are. And so I want to just pause for a minute and think about history before we delve into this. So I'm going to be talking about lighting up the fire, but that's going to come a little bit later. But what do you think about history? Anybody remember actual stuff? I felt my brain just wasn't big enough to take it all in. Since then, I think it's grown a bit. But the only thing I really remember about history at school was when our history teacher, who was an interesting character, but he used to throw the blackboard rubber at people who were falling asleep. He did. You know those wooden blackboard rubbers that they used to use. So you would be in the middle of, talking about the Vikings or the Romans or something like that. Fume cupboard! Fume cupboard! Thank you. Do we still have fume cupboards today? Yeah, okay, good. So it wasn't just this. Anyway, so the fume cupboard, it was those sliding glass doors. Do this, and it went straight. Less history. See, now I find history interesting. So what changed? So I kind of cottoned on after a while that we can actually learn from history. That history is not just this thing you have to learn so that you can pass a test, so that you get a certificate, but actually it's something that has a bearing on life. And so I love now history, and I love to kind of in my brain relive history. You go on to like Sweetheart Abbey or any room, even sometimes just the and really a little bit of history just to reinforce this. I've got some quotes about history. Would you like history quotes? So George Santayana said, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it." That's an interesting statement, isn't it? Those who don't remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And George Hegel from Germany, a German philosopher, said, "We learn from history that we do not learn from history." That's a philosophical goes out. That's an interesting one, isn't it? And then finally, history's stories shape our understanding of ourselves and our place in the world. So history, I think, is really quite important. So I think we can learn from the bigger picture that history provides, We can learn from don't make them. Rewrite. Your own truth is all that counts, but history is based on actual truth. So we do well to actual truth. So we do well to research what actually happened rather than pretend what might have happened. And it's really a quest to find what the truth was from the past, not to be convenient. The Bible is one great history book, spanning 4,000 years, more or less. It's the greatest history book that's ever been written. When you think about all all the specifics, all the little stories, even birds falling from the sky and Jesus, particularly in this area. And Christianity really formed our values in the UK and in the Western world. And so if you think, why is it that people want to be compassionate? Ninian arrived. So who was St. Ninian? Well, he was just Ninian arrived. So who was St. Ninian? Well, he was just Ninian at the time. In fact, he was probably called something else, but he got called Ninian later. Ninian at the time. In fact, he was probably called something else, but he got called Ninian later. But he was... the Old Testament, and he would learn about all the stuff that Jesus taught. And so he came back to the UK thinking, I want to tell everybody else what I've learned, because this is amazing. It's completely changed my life. So he rowed a boat, legend says, whether he actually rowed the boat or whether he came some other way, I don't know. But he came on a boat to Whithorn. And you know where Whithorn is? The Machas, down in south of Newton Stewart. So in our very own Galloway, Dumfries and Galloway, there at he got just by Whithorn. And so, the precise elements of St. Ninian are not altogether clear, but we can get the picture that he came, he set up camp, and then he began to preach. And he began to tell people about Jesus. And who were the people? Well, the people at that time were called the Picts. So they inhabited Scotland. They were a Celtic kind of tribal network, and so they were Druids. If you don't know what Druids are, they're kind of now Druids wear long caps and things. They were pagan. Really, those they made up lots of stuff, and basically ruled the people through fear. And so they would have all kinds of weird stuff that went on, weird ceremonies, and so they would have human sacrifice, sometimes child sacrifice. They were to appease the gods, and it was not a very nice place to be, I would imagine, at that time. And they were all trying to get it right, of course, the people were, and so all this horrible stuff was going on. And so Ninian, who must have been so brave, came and preached the gospel and said, there is a way to God, the living God, and this is how, through believing in God. So in this region, the gospel kind of really first came to the UK. There had been Christians who were Roman soldiers, and there were people who had experienced Christianity who came and told people in the UK, but it didn't really sort of spread until Ninian came to this area and preached the gospel. And then it took off, it exploded. Wasn't that amazing? There was an awakening which spread across our region, and actually became a major center. People from far and wide came there. It was very, very busy.